thank you very much for watching or listening today. Liam Hartree here with another episode of Presenting Champions. Today I have a very special guest on this show, former world champion Isaac Chilemba, who's joining us today from South Africa. As many boxing fans will know, Isaac previously held the IBO super middleweight world title, as well as challenging for the IBF and WBO world titles at light heavyweight. He's also won quite a few regional belts as well. There's a long list of those, and he's been in with a who's who list of opponents over the course of his career so far, names including Tony Bellew, Fedor Chedinov, Dmitry Bivol, and Sergey Kovalev as well. Don't want to miss him, and quite a few others. So we're going to be talking today about his life and his career. This man has a very special story about how he became world champion, his upbringing, where he came from, and what he rose out of to become the great champion that we see before us today. So, like I said, champ, just thank you very much for making the time for this, and much appreciated.
Thank you, I'm glad I'm here.
Good. I am glad you're here as well. So I think, some of these interviews that I do, we start with, I start with more the present day, and I start with things like that. But I think with yourself, we're going to go back in time a little bit, if it's okay with you, to talk about where you grew up, because your journey to becoming world champion is truly amazing. I'm not just saying that, I really mean that. It's incredible what you've overcome to get where you are, and how inspirational that is for other people, to show them what's possible. So let's go back a little bit in time to your upbringing, where you were born, where it started for you in those early years, please.
I was born in Malawi, in a small city called Blantyre. Born and raised there, and my parents got separated when I was quite young. I was about 5 years old. So I grew up with my mother, spent most of my life, let's say my teenage with my mother. She passed away in 2004, and that's when I came to South Africa. Excuse me. My mother was half South African, half Malawian, and so she had some other family here in South Africa. So I came full up to see where she was born. That was my first time in 2004 to come up to South Africa. Going back a bit, began boxing in 2001 in Malawi as an amateur. I had a 3 years amateur career, and when I came here to my sisters and I'm living with them for a bit, and that's when I decided to turn professional. So my professional career began in 2005. Yeah, and since then I've been pro till today. I'll just make it a short brief, but yeah, that's
that's good. It touches on some of the early years, and I don't want to dwell on this because it can't be necessarily easy. But one thing I just want to ask you, for the purposes of inspiration, to other people, because that's what I'm all about. Your upbringing, it wasn't easy. I mean, by any means. One of the things you've spoken about in other interviews I've seen and read, and feel free to share as much or as little about it as you like. I don't mind. But I just want to touch on this only to show people how possible it is, that you can overcome these things. You can come from nothing and you can become something, as you have. So I'm not bringing it up to dwell on, a negative thing, but actually to show people what's possible. So could you share with us just a little bit, before we move into your actual boxing career, about some of the hardships that you overcame as a young man and as a child as well, if that would be all right?
Yeah, growing up was not easy for me. As I said, when my parents got divorced, my father moved on and got married elsewhere, and it was quite a distance to stay in touch. I didn't see my father for quite years, must be about 10 years since the next time I saw him again. And grew up with my mother. As I said, my mother was originally born in South Africa, came to Malawi as her father dropped her in Malawi when she was young. I think she was like 13, 14. So she also had no people she knew very well. That is, most of the people that she knew back then, she grew up with all passed. So it was very hard life for my mother to make means go up and down. So as a result, with no education as well, as I said, she came to South Africa when she was, to Malawi when she was about 13 years old and never had any education because when she left South Africa, it was during the apartheid time. So living in Malawi, she grew up in a village and with the kids, no other parent to support, no relatives around. It was very hard for her to a point where she tried everything she can, work there in a salon, do this little business and that, to a point where she just ended up being in doing the nightlife, working, going to the bars, picking up guys. So that's what she spent most of her life doing. So growing up with her, living with her, me, my brother, my baby sister, we witnessed all of this, grew up with it, watching my mother almost every night or every second night coming home with a different guy. And it was a quite disturbing life. And I did my primary school okay. I was a quite bright kid at my age. I was getting good grades, but when it came to go to secondary school where fees were required, because primary school was free, government school was free, and when we get to go to secondary school, my mother couldn't afford to send me to school, so I had no way to get my education further. So all I did is just to help my mother out at home when she's out, looking after my baby sister and my baby brother, and open up my own business. I started my own business when I was like 11, selling stuff, doing some little, having a little shop on a corner, a little table selling things at night. I pack at home. So yeah, that was life that I grew up with. And until 2001 when I got introduced to boxing, and I was so intrigued what I saw looking over the window when I went to this place called Brand Life Center, and I saw kids doing boxing. And I walked in and I asked if anyone can do it and if I can do it. And the trainer, Mr. Kazembe, Anderson Kazembe, at that time was a national amateur coach, said, yeah, you can train, anyone can learn boxing. And that was it. The things flipped a bit. There was a little bit of hard time. There was also hard time in between after I began boxing, my mother getting sick till the time she passed. And I had to live on my own with my baby brother. At the time, my baby sister was with my older sister here in South Africa. So I had to take on my own young brother, live with him. And at this time, at 11, 12, I had to do my own business, paying rent, make sure there's food every day at home. It was quite hard for about a year or so until my sister arranged that I just come to South Africa and see what I can do. And that was the turning point.
It is incredible, no matter how many times I hear it, because I was following your boxing career anyway, and for a time, and I never had an idea about some of this until after I'd followed it for a period of time, and you gave some interviews, and you revealed more of this in more recent years, and I thought, wow, what this guy has overcome to become world champion is exceptional, and it's not only that, but to inspire people, as I've mentioned already, and show them what can be done. Because this is the very cool thing about your life is it's sort of bigger than you, and even though there's tragedies there's there's hardships, which I'm amazed you talk about it so easily, because it must be difficult. But even though there's the positive, that it shows people what can be done, and that's why I wanted to mention that. So you talk about your start in boxing, when it first began and everything. Did you take to it very naturally? Did you enjoy it from the beginning?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning when I started boxing, I didn't know that anyone can do boxing. I thought, because my idea back then, and talking about growing up in Malawi, and we never really had any knowledge about any other sport than soccer, maybe netball, athletics, maybe, but I didn't know anything about all other uh, all other sports until I walked into this place and found out that in Malawi boxing existed. Now, at that point, I grew up knowing boxing. I knew from watching movies, and the real boxing fight I ever watched was 1996. I was, I think, about 8 or something. I watched Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, and from there I had an idea that to do boxing you have to be a big guy. I didn't know that anyone can do, and I didn't know that kids are involved in boxing. So when I walked into the gym and they told me, yeah, you can start, and I saw other kids doing boxing, I was like, oh wow, I can do this. So immediately the day I started, I picked up and I enjoyed. From there on, I enjoyed every moment of it. So when I came to South Africa, it was my passion. I didn't see anything else I can do than boxing.
Amazing, amazing. So you really fell in love with the sport, and that is fantastic. So moving on with that as well, into obviously you had some amateur fights. For the purposes of time with this, I want to move into your pro career actually, because obviously we can't talk about every fight because of people's attention. So turning professional, obviously you started off very well. You started off with a fourth round technical knockout, I think. When you look at your early record, there's a number of stoppages there, and you were moving on nicely. Now, as I mentioned, for the purposes of time, I want to pick some key fights instead of talking about all of them. So we're coming forward a number of pro fights now. A number of pro fights have happened, and this will be your first title fight when you won the African super middleweight title, the championship, your first title, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And as I mentioned, this is a few fights into your pro career now. So looking back on that time, obviously you've gone from these hardships to, practicing boxing, mastering it, having the amateur fights, and starting to move through your pro career, and you won your first title. How did it feel at that time to start having some success, to win your first belt? I know there was many more to come, but at this time, did it feel that it was starting to, materialize?
I don't know how I can explain the feeling. In the moment, what I felt, even when I was told, okay, never mind about getting the title. When I turned professional and I have my first fight and stop the guy stop as my pro debut, stop my opponent. I couldn't believe that I was in the reality. I thought maybe I'm dreaming or something. And when it gets to the championship, first of all, I couldn't believe that I was someone who is good enough to fight for a title fight, any type of a title. I didn't know that. And when I looked back, all the wins, I know I had a loss in between because it was a last minute fight that I took, and I wasn't fit enough to go. I think it was a 4 or 6 rounder. I lost on points, but I just couldn't do it. But I just didn't know that I was good enough to be at that stage, at that level, fighting for the championship belt and winning it. I don't know. I don't know how to explain the feeling. I felt, first of all, I was very proud of myself, and it was the gratitude, I think, to everybody who pushed me, helped me to get to where I was at that point. And it was a great feeling. Even all other titles that I won in a way, and all the major fights I've been in, even those fights that I lost, I know most of it was my own fault that I destroyed the possibility of winning the fights. But I still can't believe. I feel like I'm still living in the dream world.
It's amazing, in that way that you feel, that you feel almost surprised by your success in a way. It's a funny thing because I have heard other champions, on here and in other places who've told me that. So you're not the first one to say it, but it's always surprising to hear a little bit nonetheless. So after this point, you were pretty much on a roll, as we say, because after winning the African super middleweight title, you also won the vacant WBO African light heavyweight title, I believe. Won the in subsequent fights. I've got a list of them here, by the way, because of all the regional ones, because you've won so much stuff. Um, won the WBC International and African light heavyweight titles, and soon we'll be coming to another big one. So your career was really starting to sort of take off at this point. Did you still feel, as you won more titles, even though these are regional titles, it's a great achievement. Did you still feel surprised by your success at that point, or did you start to become more comfortable with the idea that I can do this?
I would say I think even though I still had a goal, and I still have that goal, is to be one of the best in the world, and I wanted to conquer the division, especially light heavyweight. By that time, I think the day that I got comfortable with who I am and started feeling feel like I deserve to be in that position. I think that was also the downfall. That was a downfall of my career, because then I started being comfortable and doing things that I shouldn't be doing as an athlete. I wasn't careful whatsoever, just do whatever, because there was moments where I was getting calls, say, okay, Isaac, we've got a fight for you in 3 weeks' time. Can you take a fight? And I'll say, yeah, sure, I'll take a fight. In 3 weeks' time, I'll go to the gym for 2 weeks, fight, and defeat the guy to win a championship fight with a 3 weeks training camp. And then I got comfortable. I thought that I was, at that level. Then I started going other way. That's what disturbed my career in between.
It's very interesting to touch on that. And shortly, I'd like to touch on that more, because your career has had highs and lows, which you're very open about. But before we get to some of that, I do want to talk about one of the big highs of your career, which is obviously winning the world title that I mentioned earlier, IBO Super Middleweight World Title. You won that. Now, I'd like to talk about this because with this one, world title fight is a massive thing. So I don't necessarily have the question about this particular round or this particular thing. What I'd just like you to do is to describe the fight in your own words. I've seen it obviously, but you're the one who had the experience of the fight. You're the one that was there. So if you'd like to share anything about the build up to it, what it was like to win, moments in the fight that stand out to you. And I asked champions this more broadly on purpose because you get things that otherwise, if I sort of honed in on this round or this thing, I'd miss something else. As I say, you're the one who was there. So in your own words, what was it like winning the world title? Any aspect of the fight that you'd like to share with us and the fans around the world?
I used to have what I usually mostly a night before the fight, I lay in bed and I visualize the fight from beginning to the end, and I see myself winning the fight, raising my hands, and everything goes as planned. And when I get in that ring, my biggest surprise is when it goes other way, when I didn't get the win. But when I won, I knew already in my heart, in my head, I won the fight already. So it was just like I'm just going over what I've done already. So yes, it's always a great feeling. I don't know how to describe it. It's more of being unbelievable that you actually at that level you actually achieved what you're supposed to, and you actually stepping a step further from where you began. So it's a feeling that I don't know how to explain it. It's like standing in space, you're not touching the ground, there's nothing to touch, but you're just floating. It's something that you cannot explain, but you still feel like you're standing on the ground, but there's no ground, you're just in the space. That's how it felt every time I want to fight. It's a feeling that I don't even know how to, most of the time I didn't even know how to express it. Only when I get back, whether to the hotel room or go home, and maybe that's when I'll sit and sometimes the tears will come out because I can't just believe what just went down.
Amazing. That is incredible. And again, I've heard that from a few different people who've won world titles, where they say it's very difficult to put into words the magnitude of that. And again, you're not the first one to say that, but it's really good to get an insight. Also, what you said about visualizing as well, I love that. and it's a really good tip for any, if there's any up and coming fighters watching this or listening to this. I definitely say that visualizing, because as much as your training has to be 110% and your conditioning has to be 110%, some of it is mental, and I think having a a positive mindset going into a
Yeah.
fight makes a big difference personally, and so I'd say it's good you mentioned that as a very good technique actually. So moving forward a little bit from this time to talk about a few of the highlights here. There came a time when, and I should have mentioned this, a lot of these fights were happening in Africa. A lot of them were happening in South Africa. There came a time when you began to fight in America, in the US as well. And this is also a big step that people could easily overlook. Talking about this title and that title, and obviously you've won a lot of belts, but also making it to compete in other countries, become an international fighter. This is a big achievement in itself. So when you started to do that, what were some of the experiences you had? Was it quite different boxing in the USA and other countries with the crowds, the commissions? Was it quite a
Yeah,
different
it was quite difficult because when you're at home, it's different than when you're away. And yes, I know. I believe that when you're fighting someone in their own home ground, the pressure is on them because then everybody around them, they've got all the support and they don't want to disappoint. But also for someone who's come to somebody's place, to somebody's country to fight, it's very hard because there's intimidation going on, and no one is going to root for you. You won't hear your name in the crowds because, believe it or not, the crowd gives you energy to go on. You might run out of gas. You might have nothing else left, but from people screaming in your name and just pushes you to go a little bit further. So yeah, but I'll say my goal was to conquer, uh, to one day go down in the boxing history. When people talk about boxing, my name appears. So I knew fighting locally, just be happy with which most fighters I've seen come and go. They might win a world title, but they win in their country. Someone, the champions or challenger comes to their country fight, they win the title, they defend it in their own country a couple of times, and that's it. They never go anywhere. They never. So my goal was to go out there and prove that I can do that all over. And thank God enough, I got opportunities to go a little bit further, go to US, UK, Russia, all those countries to fight. And it was a great experience.
experience? Fantastic. As I mentioned, a great achievement as well, fighting
Yeah.
all over the world. Now, another thing you touched on here, which I need to touch on as well. Obviously, I've mentioned you began fighting in America. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, Edison Miranda is another name in there as well. Absolute beast of a fighter who you defeated as well. But one of the things I touch on coming forward a few fights from there is obviously Tony Bellew. Now, with myself being in the UK, I'd like to touch on this one because you came over here to fight him not once but twice as well. For anyone that doesn't know, so obviously Tony Bellew, he's a very popular fighter in the UK and elsewhere. He's gone on to acting in the Creed films and all of these different things that he's doing. But I think it would be good to mention that fight from the point of view, well, both of those fights from the point of view of your experiences in the UK. First of all, any of the fans watching this over here would love to hear about how you were welcomed or not, as the case may be, and also, what your thoughts were on the fights themselves, which for anyone that doesn't know is one draw and one loss. But as is often the case with these things, there's often other factors that come into that, and I'm sure they will be here as well. So can you tell us a little bit about your fights with Tony Bellew, your experiences in the UK, and all that stuff?
Excuse me. Yeah. First of all, what can I say about Tom Cruise? Is a character. He's mentally insane. That's what I can say. Yeah, but he's a cool guy, though. He's a cool dude, though. Yeah, fighting with Bellew was a great experience, especially the first fight when I fought him in his home ground, Liverpool. I had an experience I never had anywhere else in the world. the people, the fans, we actually scared to leave the hotel just to go out in the street. I had all these Liverpoolians fans screaming in my face and stuff. We're at the arena when we're walking into the ring. They were actually throwing those plastic bottles on us and stuff like that. So it was quite an experience. But talking about the fight itself, the first fight I was quite sick, but my manager then wanted to withdraw me from the fight and I refused because I fought sick before. It was just flu. So when I fought Miranda, I had flu and I went through all rounds and still win the fight. And this time I was sitting in a hotel room, sneezing, coughing, and cold, sweating in a cold weather, but I was sweating. And she wanted to call the fight off, but I said, no, I'll do it. I know myself, I'll do it. Even though I'm sick, I'm going to do it. So, yeah, I went into a fight sick, but I did what I can. I got a draw. To me, I thought I won the fight. And because of that, then I disturbed myself. I said, I got a draw while I was sick. I got a draw that I didn't deserve. I believe I won the fight. And with all everything that was going on, the fans and the atmosphere, it brought out a lot of anger that I never knew I had in me before. So when 2 or 3 months later we got a rematch, I carried that all with me. I had so much hurt and so much anger in me. I just wanted to go destroy Tony Bellew. As a result, I went to do the second fight in London and I wasn't there. My mind was gone because in my mind, all I wanted just to knock him out and I was so pissed for everything that just went on. And as a result, my mind went blocked. So second fight, I don't even remember how I did it. I don't even know how I went through 12 rounds with him in the second fight. So yeah, but it was quite an experience. I enjoyed everything. I learned a lot from it and I experienced a lot. It's something that no one will ever take away from me until the day I leave this planet.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement, in itself, fighting him twice, coming over here. I am sorry about the fans. I mean, all I can say is different parts of the UK.
I believe even if Bellew came, especially Malawi, because I'm Malawi born raised, if Tony Bellew was fighting Malawi, I believe the fans would treat him the same. That's what fans do. Yeah, so it's everywhere.
No, that's true. The fans get very passionate. But there are certain areas of the UK that are more known for that than others. Is what I'll say, and as it is probably the case in most countries. And I say when you came to Liverpool, they're good people, but they're different breed.
In London, when I fought the second fight in London was cool. I enjoyed everything. There was no such thing. It was just Liverpool. It was just different. Different experience.
Yeah, I can understand that. Living in the UK, I know where you're coming from with that. They're a different breed up there. It makes sense. So okay, so at moving forward a little bit with this now in time. Obviously, there's a lot of so many great fighters that you've been in there with. And I mentioned Kovalev earlier. I mentioned. I don't know if I mentioned them all actually, but I mentioned a good few. There's a lot of good fights, but one of the things to touch on, talking about the highs and lows of your career, you've been very open about at a point in your career, you were having some difficulties outside of the ring, and I'm a very positive person. I like to talk about, what you've achieved that you should be so proud of, and you really should be. But when you've given other interviews, you've spoken openly about some things with fights, where the way you were living outside of the ring affected the fights and things like this. I'd like to get into that a little bit because it's something that the average fan on the street, they may not know. And again, it can be a lesson for up and coming fighters. So I'm not asking things just to dwell on anything bad, but for a purpose. So with that in mind, at what point did you start having a little bit of trouble outside of the ring, itself?
I mean, I've been always depressed all my life. I mean, growing up when I was young, I think my first attempt I was about 7, tried to take my life. It didn't work out. It didn't happen. The rope broke as I tried to hang myself, and Yeah, well, the second time I tried, it was just before I came to South Africa. I tried to end myself with the pills and didn't work out as well. I end up just throwing up everything and feeling sick for a few days until I recovered. So everything else that was going on, every time I think about things that went on in my life, I start getting this depression going on. And at the time, I found something that was numbing everything, which was alcohol. Then when I started getting these feelings, I just buy myself some booze, and just numb my feelings and stuff. But it got to a point where I couldn't handle it anymore. And in 2008, I end up not 2008, just 2017. I end up in rehab. Um, Not necessarily from alcohol, because it was 3 months of abuse. Yes, it was alcohol, but I abused alcohol for 3 months because I was very depressed after my injury and everything. I thought my career was over and I didn't know what else to do. And the depression kicked in, and my relationship at the time just drove me insane. So I just thought, you know what, I think it's time for me to leave the planet. And I tried as well then until I end up in a rehab. My psychologist checked me in, and I was in rehab for more than a month. And when I come out, I try to practice everything that I learned from rehab and seeing all the psychologists and stuff, and start seeing the light to life, start enjoying life, seeing the purpose of why I'm here and stuff. Even though I'm still struggling with it, but I started feeling better. I mean, I started getting better, looking at things on a different view. Like I got a point where winning the fight, losing the fight didn't matter to me. Like I did a lot of things. There's a lot of things. When I fought Bivol, Bivol was one of the easiest fights. I know he's one of the great fighters today, but it was one of the easiest fights I ever I could have gotten into. But that night, I mean, the night before weigh-in, I was in. I checked out from the hotel room that where all my teammates were in. I checked out. I mean, I left the room, went to get myself a little motel somewhere like few miles away, and get myself some booze and cigarettes and lying there. I get myself a smoking room. I was drinking all night, smoking. Woke up in the morning, everybody, HBO, my team, everybody was looking for me because I switched off my phone. I came, I had to go spend 2 hours on treadmill because the night before I was drinking, spent 2 hours on treadmill to make weight, go weigh in. The following day, I was in the ring fighting before. And I was in there knowing that I'm not going to win the fight. I just went just to go through it because I signed a contract already. If there was no contract, I could have withdrawn from the fight. Because there's so much going on. I had so much issues back at home, my relationships and everything. Yeah, like even like I thought there's been a lot of fights that have been like that where I just go there. I don't want to do it, but I'm just doing it because I'm there already, you know. But if I applied myself, if I was 100% all right, if I was 100% mentally, physically the way I'm supposed to be, before Belu, I could have beaten them, all of them,
Yeah.
you know. But it's just, I think it's a mental block. So one of the issues or one of the things that make me who I am, I guess, and just stop myself, as my psychologist believe that I've got the fear of success for some reason. So I try to do whatever I find things, reasons in a way, try to maintain where I am than progressing, being somewhere where I wish I can be.
That's quite an insight. I mean, I would say that, I mean, obviously, this is just from the outside, if you like, looking in, to your life. As I mentioned before, you have a lot to be proud of. But I would say that obviously it's amazing that you talk so openly about this because so many people think that, champions are these sort of invincible people, but obviously they go into demons like everyone, like so many people do. And recently we've had people come out with it. Tyson Fury came out with his problems, and Frank Bruno years ago, and there's a lot of people. Mike Tyson, there's a lot of people now opening up
Yeah.
about it. I wonder how much of it is to do with traumas, like traumas early in life that are a factor, in this type of thing.
Most of it, yeah, is to do with upbringing. and the life that ever experience, whatever life they have experienced in their path. And yeah, my life growing up was quite disturbing, as I said. And even as I said, my psychologist, everybody I've seen to seek help when I was in rehab, they all believe it all to do with my childhood. And all this, what I do is subconscious stuff. I only realize afterwards, after effect, I'm like, why did I do that? What was I doing? And why did I get to that point? And during the time, I'm just numbing my feelings. I'm just numbing my emotions. I just don't want to feel anything because I've seen enough in my experience of my life experience. I've seen enough and I just don't want to feel it anymore. So if things start getting the level of stress, whatever it is, some emotions start getting somewhere, just find something to numb it. And for me, the best was a bottle of alcohol.
But it is still amazing how you've sort of faced up to that, and you've gone into rehab and taken steps to sort of amend some of these issues as well. That's a very brave thing to do, because it's and I'm not just saying that, it really is, because to face your demons type of thing. I know it's like a cliche to say, but to do that, it's a very, very brave thing, because sometimes these things that are inside of us, they can be more frightening than anything on the outside, and I've had people, one or two other champions, tell me that some of what they've gone through with their mentally and things is more scary than any opponent,
Well,
anything.
then, I mean, there's no operator I looked at and being scared of. I've never been scared of anyone. I mean, the physical part is not. It's the mental. The mental is the most scary
Yeah.
part, and it's all within self.
Mm.
You can either be there or just go other way, and
Mm.
that's what it was happening to me. So thank God I went through all of that, the rehabs, AA meetings and stuff, and now I'm still pushing my life together. And I believe, I understand that no one can be perfect until the day they leave the planet, but I was still trying to do better and better and try to appreciate the planet. Appreciate life, enjoy whatever I'm going through, every experience, whether bad, good, appreciate it and keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also part of it during all this time, I end up having a child. So that's one of the things that got me to try to step up a bit, because now I'm a father and I can't be that child anymore, that insane person anymore. I have to man up. And my son have to grow up, looking up to his father. So I'm trying. I'm trying to
Mm.
do my best.
Well, I'm really glad that that you're in a better position now, and I know these types of things is something you have to work on every day. But at the same time, to hear that you're in a better place now than the way you were is a really
Yeah.
good thing. It's really, and I'm not, I mean, that's just me saying that to you. It's really, it's nice to hear that things are a bit better than what they were. He's a good man. That's not even a question. Just wanted to say. So the last couple of things with this, looking back, one of the questions that always comes up, about the boxing itself in every interview, that I do this boxing, people always want to know a few, what you call them, a few facts, if you like, about things. One of them is about hardest hitters. That comes up in every interview that I do with boxing. It's like a fan favorite question. You probably get asked this all the time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Moving back into that sort of a couple more. Looking back, we'll look to the future. Then we'll wrap it up. But obviously, you fought a lot of guys that are known for being big punchers, including the fact you have a habit of fighting. Russians. There's quite a few Russians on your record as well, and quite a few fights you've had over there. But is there one that stands out as being, the hardest puncher out of all the guys you fought? Maybe more than one, and anyone that comes to
You know what? Anyone can hit.
mind?
Uh, what matters is how good the punch, how accurate the punch was.
Very
And
true.
yes, I fought guys that were feared with the power, one of them being Kovalev,
Mm.
Sergei Kovalev. But for me, I didn't feel it because well, I didn't get hit much. Yes, he dropped me. I made a stupid turn and it caught me, and that proved that the guy carried a lot of power. But I took it well, get up, continue, and still went the distance. So power really don't bother me. The only time I ever felt somebody's power is in sparring, because in sparring, I'm relaxed. I've got nothing to lose to or win. I'm just learning. I'm just learning and upgrading my knowledge. But when it comes to fight, I switch my mind into a fight mode that nothing you can shoot me in the leg, I won't feel it. Maybe 2 hours later, I'll feel it. But during that time, I'll continue fighting, even though I just got a bullet in my kneecap. So I can't really tell who exactly was a hard puncher I ever fought. I can tell you who I sparred with that were hard punchers. All I know is yes, there's some guys that gave me troubles when I fought, and there's some guys that were easy. That's the only thing that I know, because for me it's more of mental, trying to being on 1 second or one step ahead of my opponent. And yes, I fought some guys that the further I tried to go, they already cancelled what I was planning to do. So mentally they gave me a challenge. Yeah, so there's been a couple of them. Those are things that I remember. After the fight, I remember that guy gave me troubles. But about the power and how fast or how slow, I don't recall.
Fair enough. That's a really good insight into it. And the other thing to touch on here, I like to ask people this, is looking back on your career so far, and I believe there's more to come for you, by the way, but looking back on it so far, what would you say are you most proud of in your career? Is it winning the world title? Is it a particular fight, particular belt? Maybe it's not one thing, maybe it's a big...
For me, it's the experience.
Hmm.
The experience, I appreciate that more. Being in a place I've been, being in a position I've been, fighting at the big arenas, fighting for the championship, have people talking about the fight. It's a great experience to me. I mean, yes, the title is a trophy that comes with it, but it's just part of it. And yes, being on record, internet and stuff, those things are not, they're not what I appreciate more. What I appreciate is just the experience that I went through. Knowing that, okay, I'm getting on a plane today, we're going to US or going to Russia or going to UK, going to fight and land in the country and meet different people with a different culture, different mentalities, and get to know each other and get in the fight, go through the fight, come back home. It's a great experience for me that I went through. So those are things that I appreciate most.
I love that answer. I mean, it's fantastic, because there's so many blessings, in the process, and when you love the process of something that you do, it doesn't have to be boxing. It can be anything. You enjoy the step by step.
Yeah.
That's the magic.
I've met a lot of I've met a lot of interesting people with the different ideas, with the different views of life, with the different those things I appreciate most. And think that how different the cultures in the world are and how people carry themselves in different areas and how they behave, how they do things. That humbles me more than being in a championship ring. I mean, in a ring, in a championship fight, winning the titles and stuff.
Yeah, and it is amazing because obviously you've been all over the world, with your career. I mean, all over America, as you mentioned, the UK, different parts of Russia. I think you had one fight was in Greece, wasn't it? I mean, there's so many places that you've been. Oh, and Canada as well. I'm just looking here, so I can understand that the diversity. I love traveling as well. I can understand that very much. So looking forward to the future a little bit more now, because obviously we've spent quite a bit of time reminiscing and looking backwards and things. As you mentioned at the beginning, you're obviously still training. When you came on, you just finished a session today. You're obviously keeping very busy. What is next for you in terms of boxing, in terms of future fights, maybe in terms of after boxing a little bit as well? Although I still think you have more fights left in you, to be honest. Personal opinion. But what's coming next?
the fire was burnt out of me. Got to a point where I just don't want to do this anymore. I know boxing is not a long career; it's a very short career, and I have after boxing I have to do something else. And I thought I will just start it now. I'll find something else to do and get out of boxing while I'm still okay, still safe. Um, Hopefully, still 100% functional. No, then and also the biggest part of me wanting to retire now, it was to do with what was going on in my team that I had for years, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of legal things going on and stuff. I thought I was just, you know what, I just get out of boxing and just be at home, do something else, be a dad, and just be a normal human and athlete. But with the support of friends, family, my current girlfriend, and everybody encouraged me and gave me the faith that I still got more time. Yes, I know that I still got more time because I'm still young. I'm only 34 now. I still got years to go, and I can still do this. So I got me a new team with Sean Smith now, and we have this fight coming up on 27th of May in Poland, and I'm looking forward. This is like a comeback. That's why now I just came back from training now because we are preparing for that. So the light is back. I can feel the light back. I can feel I'm enjoying it and loving boxing again. So therefore, I don't know how long I'm gonna this thing. How long it's gonna take me until my mind tells me to retire, but we'll take it as one fight at a time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's the best way. That's the best way. But I'm glad that personally, I'm glad that you're continuing fighting. Only because you know better than anyone because it's you. When you feel you've done enough, when your body's had enough. But at the same time, I can see that there's a few more miles on the clock, and it's good to hear that. After boxing, who knows? But it's always a difficult one. I would say you could make a great trainer. I know that's an very obvious thing to say because of your experience. I don't know if you want to do that. You could do something completely different. I know ex-champions who've gone into business.
That was my biggest challenge when I decided to retire. I didn't know what else I'm gonna do next because since I was like 14 years old till now, 20 years later, 21 years later, this is all I know. This is what I've been doing, boxing. So I was like, okay, now I have to get into something else. What I'm gonna do? Do I carry on training people? Do I remain in boxing? Do I move on completely out of boxing? So I'm glad now I'm still in boxing. Now it's time for me to plan my future to see what I'm going to do after boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. I've known champions go into everything from business to politics to acting, all sorts of stuff, all the way to people who don't do anything in the public eye, and they they live a quiet life and things like that. And they do other things. Like I know one guy who's recently retired, who's a really really good animal breeder. Breeding all types of things and maybe he'll do that. He's not sure yet, but there's
Yeah.
options. There's good options out there for you. That's the only
There
thing
is a lot of things that I just have to start looking into it and prepare myself.
Hmm. Well, whatever you decide to do, when you hang them up, also I wish you all of the best as well. With that, with your future, because it is a big step. It is a big step, but I'm sure you'll get to it as well. So we've talked about a lot of good things, including, as I mentioned, some really good advice for the up and coming fighters. So, what the only thing I'd like to say is if you had the opportunity to give advice, and this is the last thing, and just say this, a word for your fans at the end, and then that's it. What would you say would be two or three very key pieces of advice for fighters who are starting out? You've been doing this 20 years now, so you could be in a great position just to say to them maybe one or two good things to go towards, maybe a couple of things to avoid. It's the very last thing just to mention.
The most important thing for me is the will. The will is important when you really want something. and nothing disturb you to get to your goal. That's the most important. So once you look at the target and that's what you want, and you have to be like a wild animal. You look at the target and you go for it, and don't get distracted, because that's what happened to me. I had a target. I was going for it. Then in a way, I started to get distracted. I started looking, going this way, take a 2-3 steps back this side, 2-3 steps other side, and that disturbs you and takes longer, because now I have to step backwards, sometimes step sideways. Took longer to get where I wanted to get. So distractions, things that happens in a way. If you try to stay away, just focus. You reach, have to be like an animal. Just focus on one target, and that's you want to be the great. You want to be a world champion. You want to be the greatest fighter of all time, and that's your goal, and you go for it. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, don't have a big head. I think you know better than anyone. You can be undefeated. I believe even Mayweather can take advice from anyone today, because I've seen him, I've met him, and I know how humble he can be. Even though he looks very arrogant on TV when he talks to people, but he listens. People, anyone in the gym, someone who's never even had a profile can come say, "Roy, you do this." I mean, Freud, you do this. Why don't you try this? He listens and tries and try to apply to his style. So you have to always give a door open to learn new things. Don't think you know better because I know I'm undefeated, I'm a world champion, and you can tell me nothing. That attitude already takes everything away. I mean, you don't have to take everything from anyone, because some of the other things might not help, but you listen, you try them out. If they're not for you, you leave it. If there's something that you might take from their advice, you take it and progress and advance yourself. So learning is very important. And just remain humble and just do what you love best. And that's what I figured out being in the game for a while.
Well, there's some really good advice there. Really, really good advice. Honestly, that you've learned from your many years in boxing. Powerful. And I know, obviously, a lot of these people will have their own trainers, their own coaches. But still, with everything you've accomplished, I just wanted to ask you that, because we have like a global reach with this, so that advice can sort of filter down and hopefully help some people. And yes, Floyd Mayweather, I've only met him one time, but he was much more humble in person than what he appears to be, in the media. I was quite surprised, actually, but he was actually really, really good to talk to and everything. So any fans out there who don't know that, very true. So the last thing, any words to your fans is the last thing, because the sport would be nothing without the fans. Maybe some people watching this, first time, they've heard about your life, but maybe some people followed you for a long time. So if any of them are watching this is the last question. What would you say to your supporters?
Well, like I said to all the supporters, all my fans, even the haters, their support, I do appreciate their support. It's like a fuel that kept me going, kept my career going. If no one wants to see you, no one wants to watch you, you got no reason to carry on fighting. But I'm still here, still fighting, and I still want to do this, because I know there's people out there that they appreciate my boxing. They love, they could sit and watch me fighting. So I really appreciate that. That's one of the biggest things that keep me going, other than family and other stuff. And I just want to say thanks to all of them for actually loving the sport itself, and seeing someone like me in it and love the guy and follow the guy. There's a lot of fighters out there that could have been watching, following, supporting, but to be one of their supporters, one of their guy that they like or the support, I do appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, there's some wonderful words there as well. And all that's left for me to do is just to thank you for your time once again, because you've taken time out of your evening, and we've got into some really good material here. I'm very, very happy with it. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time.
It's an absolute. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.